In this video, we are going to be comparing the iPad mini to the Kindle Paperwhite, and we're going to try to find out which is the superior e-reader. This video is going to break down into two pretty simple parts. We're going to keep my standard review format. We're going to look at some pros, and then we're going to look at some cons for each device, and then we'll quickly at the end talk about which device would be best for you. So let's just get right into it, talking first about the iPad. Now, I do got to be totally honest, I did buy this iPad mini specifically to do this video, so I'm not begging here, but if you could throw me a subscribe and maybe a thumbs up on the video, that would help out a ton. This was not exactly super duper cheap. We'll talk more about the price as we go through the video, but I am glad that I bought it because it has some really solid pros. Starting with the most obvious, this is a full-fledged tablet. It's an iPad. You know what an iPad is. You might have one already, or maybe you're kind of in the research stages, but you know what an iPad is. It's like your cell phone, but can't make phone calls unless you have the cellular one. I have the Wi-Fi one, but it's basically your phone, but slightly bigger. You can surf the web. You can download any and every app from the App Store. You can take notes on the Notes app. You can even send text messages, assuming that you are connected to Wi-Fi or have the cellular model. You can FaceTime. You can do everything you can do on an iPad. And I'm just going to take for granted that you are pretty familiar with what an iPad can do. But the obvious big pro here is that you can also download the Kindle app. So you have a full-fledged tablet with more or less the capabilities of a Kindle. And I think that's got to be the biggest pro on the entire list. And with that, because it is a full-fledged tablet, you get a beautiful display. Now, if you want in-depth tech spec stuff on the display, we're not going to get into all that in the video. This is more of a top view comparison type video, but you obviously get a very crisp, very clear, full color display that's really easy on the eyes and is, again, probably going to be very familiar to you if you've got an iPhone or basically any cell phone made in the last few years. But the next pro is much more specific to reading here, which is what this video is all about. What I really love so far about the iPad is that I can download any and every reading app. So I have the Kindle app on here, but I also have the Libby app. I have the Hoopla app. I've obviously got access to the internet and all kinds of PDFs and other online free books that you can read. I've got even the Google Play Store. You can access books on here. I've got Apple Books. I've got basically every book buying ecosystem that exists in one device. And I think that's really, really great if you're like me and you try to did that come out? That didn't come out right. You like to try to get the best deal possible. You can shop around. If you want a book, you're not locked into one specific ecosystem. And yes, you can sideload other devices, but we're going to assume that you don't want to do that. It's not particularly hard, but I don't think the average person is going to do that. So if you're just an average person, you're kind of locked in on the Kindle or any other device to their one ecosystem. But with an iPad, the world is your oyster. And another thing that I really like about this device is that it is fairly portable for what it is. I have an iPad Pro it feels a lot bigger than this. I think it's really only a few inches larger, the screen that is, but it feels a lot bigger and bulkier, whereas this couldn't quite fit in my pocket. But if you carry a purse, for example, or maybe you carry a backpack or something like that, you'll have absolutely no problem throwing this thing in your backpack. And you've got access to, like we said, pretty much any and every book, any place you go. It's not as portable as like a cell phone or even a Kindle. We'll talk more about that in a little bit, but it's fairly portable for what it is. And it feels a little fragile. It's obviously a glass screen, and I don't know about you, but I've been guilty of breaking iPhone screens before, and even my iPad screen has a little crack in it. So you've got to be careful with this. It is more fragile than your traditional e-reader, but it's pretty portable. In addition to that, in no particular order, as you could probably tell, it does feature dark mode, where that will kind of invert the colors, so the blacks become whites, the whites become blacks. It also has True Tone, which kind of is just a little easier on the eyes. And it's also got Night Shift, I think it's called, where it's basically like a yellow light on the Kindle. So it does all of that to try to make the reading experience a little easier on the eyes, which I do really appreciate. During the day, the brightness of the screen is perfectly fine, but at night, it can be a little bright compared to an e-reader or any other device. So it's nice that they've kind of got some of these features integrated as well. And the last thing that I'll mention on our pros list is that the iPad is far more customizable, I think that's a word, than your traditional e-reader. And by that, I mean, if you want a case, you've got 1,000,001 options. If you want to add a pop socket, you can add a pop socket to a Kindle or whatever too, but you've got options. If you want a stylus pen holder thing, which another pro, I guess, on this is you can connect the Apple Pencil, and that's a little bit of an expensive upgrade, but an upgrade you could make if you want, which brings up another pro too. You can annotate on the iPad as you read in certain apps. You can't do it in the Kindle app, but you can mark up books depending on where you're reading them. But it's just far more customizable. You can change the lock screen, you can change the home screen, you can change the layout, you can change pretty much anything and everything you want in the device or on the device. And I think that's pretty cool. But before we talk about some cons, I want to thank the sponsor of today's video, which is FlexiSpot. FlexiSpot sent me this absolutely gorgeous EG8 glass top standing desk, and I could not be more thankful for them. The desk is absolutely gorgeous and super duper spacious. As you can see, tons of room. I'm going to have to start buying stuff to put on the desk just to fill up the space. And speaking of space, it has a drawer that fits beautifully with the overall design. I keep notebooks in there, chargers, pens, even a Kindle or two. So much space. I absolutely love it. And it's so easy to adjust. You have 4 presets that you just hold down the button for about 3 seconds, and it will remember those presets. Or you can manually adjust up or down just by touching the button. It's so easy to go from sitting to standing to anywhere in between. I absolutely love the flexibility that it gives me as someone who works from home. I do a lot of sitting at my desk, so it's nice to be able to stretch the legs and stand and be productive while not sitting down for 27 hours a day. If you're interested in this desk, please check out the link in the description below for all the details. And once again, thank you so much to FlexiSpot. Now, as far as the cons go, we've got to be honest here. For me, the biggest con by far is price. So this device is not brand new. The latest one is 2021. So doesn't sound like that long ago, but technically 3 years ago now. And it was $500 for the cheapest version. If you want more storage, which in hindsight I would probably recommend, this is the 64 gig version that I have, and it's basically already out of storage, and I don't have anything on it other than a few apps that I've already mentioned. But if you want the upgraded storage, I think it's 256 gigs. It is about $650, assuming you're buying it from Apple, not on sale or anything like that. So it is fairly expensive for what it is. It's basically an oversized iPhone that you can't make phone calls from unless you get the cellular one, which, surprise, is more, I think. Plus you have to pay monthly on it for the service. So it's basically a bigger phone or a smaller iPad, I guess. Obviously, it goes without saying. So it's not the most practical device you could spend $500 to $600 on. And for that reason, I think that brings my overall opinion of this device down a notch, just because compared to the Kindle, not to get too far ahead of ourselves, which is, when not on sale, $130, $140, but it's almost always on sale like a few times a year. You can easily get one secondhand. You could say the same for the iPad, though, in fairness. It's 3 times more, a little more, a little less. Math is not my strongest subject, but a lot more than a Kindle. In addition to that, what I really love about the Kindle is that it is a distraction-free reading experience. Not only that, but what I really value in an e-reader is that it is an e-reader. You pick it up when you want to read, and that's about it. The iPad comes with distractions. You've got games, you've got emails coming in. If you're connected to your iCloud, you've got text messages popping up. You've got all these notifications coming in, all these things to distract you as you try to read. Now, maybe you're more disciplined than me. I know you can put your iPad in like silent mode / do not disturb mode, which definitely is helpful and is a good point. But it offers a world of distractions. If I get a little bit bored with my book, I can easily swipe up, open up a game, and before I know it, I've wasted 3 hours of my life popping balloons or something. Whereas the Kindle, you can't do that, or any e-reader pretty much. So obviously that's not a shocker. You, like we said, know what an iPad is. You know the good and the bad, the distractions and whatnot that comes with it. But for me, that's a really big thing because I apparently have the attention span of a dead ant, I think. Not only that, but on the cons list as well, we've got to mention the battery. So this thing will last maybe a day and a half or so on a single charge. Obviously, that's going to depend on a lot of features. How many apps do you have open? What's your screen brightness? How many hours are you using it? And so forth. But compared to any other e-reader, at least in my experience, the battery is significantly worse. And then the last big con that I have to mention is that this screen does emit blue light. And I know that's a really big factor, because I know a lot of people like to read right before bed, and you don't want to be flooding your eyes and I guess your brain with all these signals that it's daylight out and time to wake up. So it's not great. Whereas an e-reader, for the most part, is going to not have blue light emitting from the screen. But all in all, you'll notice that the cons list is much shorter than the pros list. The iPad mini has a lot going for it, though that price tag is a little hard to swallow. But moving on to the Kindle, we've obviously got a lot of pros to talk about. If you're new to the channel, you might not have heard any of the things on the list, but if you are a regular here, some of these are probably going to sound familiar to you. We're big fans of the Kindle Paperwhite around here. So starting off, the biggest pro with the Paperwhite is the price. It's $140, and it's basically a flawless reading experience. If you just want to read, there's probably no better way to do that, save picking up a paper book in perfect daylight conditions, than to pick up the Kindle and start reading. For all of Amazon's flaws, they have certainly mastered the e-reader. It just feels nice in your hand. It's just so comfortable and easy on the eyes as you read. And it's just, as far as reading experiences go, unmatchable and untoppable, if you will. If you've used a Kindle before, you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't, I probably sound very dumb. But it's just an experience that you kind of have to try out for yourself. It's just a very comfortable way to read a book. The Paperwhite is also significantly more travelable. I mean, it's just easy. I can just about fit this in like a pants pocket when I go out. It will obviously easily fit into a purse or a bag or whatever you might be taking with you wherever you're going. And it's just nice to take and have. My wife always has like 5 Kindles on her at any given moment. They're just super portable, and you don't have to worry about it a ton. $140 is not an insignificant amount of money. But if I leave this on the bus or it falls out of my purse and falls down 17 flights of stairs, I would be disappointed. But I wouldn't be as disappointed as I would be if my iPad fell down 17 flights of stairs, because it would just be a mass of broken glass at the bottom. Whereas this might survive, but even if it didn't, I'm out $140 versus $500. That also brings up build quality. So this is a Pro and a Con. It's significantly cheaperly made. That's probably not a word, cheaperly, but it's plastic for the most part. The screen is like plastic but not plastic, if that makes sense. I don't exactly remember what the screen is made out of, but it's not tempered glass or whatever the iPad is made out of. So it's a lot less prone to break. If you drop it, I've dropped this thing probably 100 times, it's probably going to be all right, versus a very fragile iPad, for example. And speaking of the display, you get a very nice anti-glare display on the Kindle versus a very glary display on the iPad. If you're trying to read outside, for example, you'll have absolutely no problems on the Kindle. It's going to look crisp and clear and super easy to read on, versus an iPad where you'll kind of be like trying to adjust to get the sun off the screen so you can kind of read. And it's not always super duper clear and crisp and bright, even though the brightness on the iPad may be turned all the way up. Now, I talked about the iPad giving you access to basically any book buying platform you might want, and I love that. I think that's really, really great. But on the flip side, and this is as much a pro as it is a con, admittedly, but I think it's a good pro to have the Amazon ecosystem. So I don't like being locked into Amazon's prices. If the same book is cheaper somewhere else, I would much prefer to buy it there if it's significant enough of a difference. You are locked into Amazon Books only on the Kindle, unless you're going to sideload, but we're going to assume you're not. But it's also nice because it's super easy and flawless to buy a book. You just tap the screen a couple times. You're in the Kindle library. You click on the book you want, you click buy, and boom, it's there. You're reading it in just a second. Whereas the iPad offers just a couple more steps you would have to go through. It also syncs with your Audible and syncs with, any other Kindle that you might be reading, which is kind of nice. So being in the Amazon ecosystem definitely has its benefits and its downsides, that's for sure. And the last thing we'll mention for the pros for the Paperwhite is the battery. I've already mentioned it. This thing will go weeks without being charged, maybe months. Now, in my defense for saying that, maybe you're thinking mine lasts like 4 days. That might be true. We've got too many e-readers, so honestly, we don't use the same one all that much. We kind of vary them from day to day. So we're not using this 9 hours a day. We're probably using it 9 hours a week, that kind of thing. And it just lasts forever. If you're an avid reader and you're using one device, you'll probably have to charge more frequently. But for the average person, you're probably going to get by on about a month or so per charge with the Paperwhite versus a day and a half on the iPad. Now that said, as much as I do love this device, there are some cons that we have to talk about. The most obvious, the one you've probably noticed by now, is that it is a black and white display only. It's very crisp, it's easy to read on, and it looks great, but no matter what you do, it's always going to be in black and white. If you just read novels, that's no problem. I read 99.9% novels, so that never bothers me. But if you like comic books or graphic novels or even manga, I know most mangas aren't fully in color, but like the first few pages sometimes are, that kind of thing. You won't get that on the Kindle, any Kindle at this point. They are all in black and white. That may be a huge deal to you, or if you like me and just read novels or maybe even, textbooks or whatever. Probably not going to be a huge deal, but it is something that you need to know about. The iPad certainly shines if you are into graphic novels or manga or comic books or whatever. And then aside from being locked into Amazon's ecosystem, which we've already talked about, the last con that really I'll mention is that it is a bit slow and sluggish at times. Now, this is an e-reader. You read books on it, and that's basically it. You can surf the web technically, but I would not try to do that. It'll just be a waste of time. So if you're just reading books, it's fine. It will turn the page forward. It will turn the page backward. It will let you open up a book eventually. It might take a minute or two to navigate menus and find what you're looking for. I find that the biggest problems I run into are when I'm searching for a book, either in the store or in my library. For some reason, when the keyboard has to come up, the thing just shuts down and it takes forever to type in what I'm looking for, and it's not super convenient. And the only time that really happens is when I'm starting a new book. So it's not like I'm dealing with it every single day. Now, before we move on to the last part of this video where we talk about which of these two devices is best for you, I want to invite you to share more pros and cons for each device in the description below. The list could go on. Obviously, pros and cons are all subjective. Some things on my pros list might have been on your cons list and vice versa. So let me know your opinions in the comments below. What do you love about your Kindle or hate about your Kindle? What do you love about your iPad mini? What do you hate about your iPad mini? Your feedback and your input is greatly, greatly appreciated. But that said, which device is best for you? The answer to that question is obviously it's going to depend. Do you already have an iPad and you're just looking for an iPad mini that you can use as an e-reader? If that's you, I would probably not get the mini and go with the Kindle for sure, because the iPad mini is going to be like your regular iPad, but just a little smaller, a little slower, and a lot more expensive than a Kindle. It's not a bad device at all, but honestly, if I already had an iPad or any other comparable tablet, I wouldn't see a real need for an iPad mini, especially not just to read books on, given the price tag. But that's just me. I'm kind of a cheapo sometimes. But if you don't have an iPad or an iPad mini, obviously, or any other e-reader, and all you really want to do is read books, I think the Kindle is the way to go, hands down, no brainer. The price is, you can't beat it, $140 when it's not on sale. And you get all the features you would get basically in the Kindle app except for color. And I think that would be the only exception that I will say. If you read exclusively like graphic novels or magazines, or maybe like textbooks that have color images that are really important to see in color for some reason, or anything in color, you might want to consider getting the iPad. It might be worth paying 3-4 times more for, but if you just want to read books and you don't really care about playing games or surfing the internet or checking your emails, or if you can do all that from your phone anyway, I would go with the Paperwhite. But let me know in the comments below your opinion. Which do you have? Which do you prefer? If you are looking right now, which sounds best to you? Let me know for sure in the comments below, because I always appreciate hearing from you guys. But that's it for now. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.